the name Corpse Paint came about.
For me, it's just like an electric jolt.
The real ugly side of humanity, and their music sounds like it.
I always wanted to be a band that was approachable to people, that was just regular ass people. Yo, what's up? So before I start this episode, I want to bring up two really good friends of mine that I've met along the way. They've been the backbone and really the biggest supporters of this podcast since day one. Everything visually you see with this podcast has been done by Wither Designs and Benny Bones Art, and it could be your band next. Check them out on social media, get yourself something unique and original, and yeah, let's do this. I just looked, you got 204 episodes published. I'm clapping for you because I'm just above 100. My thing off of that is like, what do you feel is the most rewarding and enjoyable part of doing what you do with Getting It Out podcast?
Well, the most rewarding part and the most enjoying, they're two separate things. That I would answer that two different ways. The most rewarding part is when I hear that I'm able to turn someone else on to a new band, because I've like forever been trying to do that. When I was a kid,
okay.
I was making mixtapes and mixed CDs for people who don't even ask for them. You know, like I would just walk around school and giving them to people that I thought would like music that I like. Like I don't know what the hell that was or why I ever gave a shit to push my push my likes on other people, but I've always done it. Even if it was just like I used to do street teaming stuff back in the late '90s and just walk around just handing people cassette tapes or CD singles of stuff. I would do it for everything. I would, like, if it was just something that I thought was cool, I wanted other people to be aware of it. And I don't know why, because it doesn't like, I don't get any gain out of that, but it's just something I like passing along, just saying, hey, check this out. I think you'll like it. And when people do like it, and especially when people tell me that they like it, for some reason,
like,
that's
told you so, man. Told you so.
No, it's just, it's not even that. It's just like a huge, like, I don't know what it is. It's just something about sharing stuff and having people enjoy it, even a little bit as much as I do, is something really cool and rewarding to me. But that's not the same as what I enjoy most about doing this podcast. What I enjoy most about doing the podcast is when sorry, I'm choking here a little bit, is when I have a guest on and we actually have a really good time. Like, I'm sure you've been through this. Sometimes you get through interviews that suck. They're terrible, and
it's like a teeter-totter, man.
Yeah.
It's either they go great or they go absolutely horrible, and I'm like thinking about quitting the podcast that night.
Yeah, and so when you get ones that at the end, like, you realize you guys were both laughing, you were having a good time. They seem to be into it. They actually thank you for doing it, because that's the weird thing with doing these is that they act like they're doing you a favor a lot of the time, and in my opinion, it's pretty much the opposite. But whatever, we don't need to get into all that. So when the other person is having a good time and I'm having a good time, that's the most enjoyable part of it.
I can guarantee off of that, how you say, like, at the end when they thank you, like, some of the best guests for me say, hey man, I really appreciate you reaching out. Thank you for your time and doing this. It was a fun time. Like, those are usually the friends that I've met, like, when they're on tour and I hang out with them, where I'm like, this is why I did the podcast. Like, this definitely is worth it,
Yeah.
But then again, you'll come across like a couple where you're like, oh man, like either I was like a drag or they're just very hard to talk to people. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And sometimes it can even just be a language barrier. I've had a few of those where I was doing like I'll name names because I don't mind, but I had like a Tom Angel Ripper from Sodom on once. And he was great, but like we couldn't really get going. It was just, I'd ask him a question and like it just wasn't happening, And it ended up being like a short episode, shorter thing, just because I made of it what I could and moved on. And it's like you have high hopes for these, like it's fucking Tom Angel Ripper from Sodom. You want it to go great, but you're just like, I don't know. There's a lot of years and language between us that doesn't quite match up, and whatever. We both like the same music. Let's just go with that, you know.
Yeah, that I've definitely felt that. Like, okay, here's one. Like, what do you think is like your best guess that you've like ever had on
Yeah,
that went actually perfect? Like everything was just smooth from the beginning to end.
I think I could have a couple answers for that, but my favorite answer is it was one from like the first year that I was doing it, and it was with David Rodriguez, who was at the time the new singer of the Casualties. And
Okay.
like I'm not big into punk, right? I mean, I grew up with it and enjoyed it, but and I seen the Casualties a few times, enjoyed them, whatever. But it was just like an interview that fell into my lap. I did it with him, and we had a great time. And then I realized nothing recorded, and
Oh,
he was so cool about it. And he went to do something, and he called me back, and he was like, "Let's just do it all again." And so we just did it all again for like
probably
even longer,
better.
and
Probably
even better,
better,
yeah.
right?
And like, yeah, the joke at the end was that we were best friends now. I haven't talked to him since, but but like it was such a good time, just bullshitting with this guy. And I think because I'm not crazy about punk as a genre, even though I like it enough, but I'm not crazy. It's not my wheelhouse. That made it
Uh-huh.
even kind of more interesting because there was more like genuine questions for me to ask and more surprising answers for me to hear than when I'm talking to somebody about heavy metal and hardcore. Like I know those
Yeah,
things
you
like the
just
back of
know
my
what's
hand.
gonna. Yeah,
Yeah,
you know what's gonna
yeah.
come out of out of the question.
Right. You know
Yeah,
how like you know how a lot of times you ask questions that you know the answers to, but you're asking them because you have to ask them. That's just it's part of it's what you're there to talk about. So you got to ask this thing. And
see, okay, the one thing that I don't go off of press.
oh no, I
I
don't
don't.
either. No.
Oh,
I don't do
you
that.
don't do
No.
you don't do the press email stuff.
You mean I will set up through press people, but no, but there will be no like don't talk about this, do talk about that. I don't do
Yeah,
any of
that's
that.
exactly what I was saying. I'm the same way because like my mojo is kind of free. Like I'm gonna go into it and I'm gonna talk about whatever I want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if Metal Blade was like, hey, you have to talk about the record, I'd be like, I'll pass. You know, like I'm good.
I'll do that because I want them to feel like I won't do it because they told me to, but I'll do it because I want the artist to feel like we are promoting what they're talking about.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not gonna. I've had a lot of guys on from guys and gals on from uh, that are doing something new, but they're really known for doing something prior, like something
Right.
bigger before. Like I had Burton C. Bell from Fear Factory, right? But we weren't talking about Fear Factory. We were talking about Ascension of the Watchers, which is his other thing, right? Not nearly as good, not nearly as interesting, but
Right.
that's what he was talking about, and that's what he was giving me his time for. So I'm not going to punish him with Fear Factory questions unless it comes up genuinely. I had Per Weberg from who mostly known for being the keyboard player in
Yeah.
Opeth. I'm
Yo,
not gonna, even though I love
I'm
Opeth.
linking up with them next week.
Oh, with
Actually,
Opeth.
no,
Oh, Per.
Pure.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. He's great, but I didn't and he's on some of those Opeth records that are Opeth is absolutely one of my favorite bands of all time. And like I threw in like the comment like you're part of some of my favorite records ever. But I didn't ask him a single thing about it, like because he wants to talk about his new thing. So I want to give
Right.
them the respect without killing them. But
Yeah.
they're there
It's
for a reason. They agreed to it for a reason to begin with. So
right.
I don't want to strangle them trying to get some bullshit that I care about.
Yeah, it's tricky. Like the whole thing with me is like I'm just trying. Like I mean, same thing for you. You're trying to do a little bit something out of the blue. Like you've watched those punishing YouTube interviews where they're just like, so what are your influences and how's the next record? Is it different from the last? It's like, fuck, man, please don't do it.
Yeah, yeah, and unfortunately, I've asked those questions too, and I will
I
ask
mean,
him. But I try,
me too.
but I
Yeah,
try to like I don't know. You know how it is. You try to finesse it a little bit. You try to because sometimes you can tell that the person that you're talking to is there to do that. They're there for a press interview. They're there to just
Yeah,
go
yeah.
over the basic shit, and that's all they really want to do. And but if you can break them down and get them to relax a little bit, which is possible, not always, but they'll vibe with you and you can go off track. I used to like just asking bullshit questions right off the start. Uh,
Yeah.
like I had what was his name, Jr. from Pig Destroyer on very early on. It was like I think it was like my
Hell yeah.
second interview episode, and my first question to him was, "How often do you wash your legs?"
What did you? I remember like listening to the first couple episodes and being like, man, this guy's got some fucking awesome questions. Like,
Right.
just
But the thing for him specifically was the guy's a pig farmer. You can't a
yeah,
lot of
yeah,
people rely on the runoff to wash their legs and don't really actually wash their legs. But a guy who's farming pigs better be washing his legs, So I was just checking in with him, checking in with his leg hygiene, and you go from there, and then you're having fun. But other guys, it's not so easy, to say the least.
yeah. All right, so like being that
Well,
I
hold
saw
on a
you
second.
were
Can I cut you off here for a minute? Can I throw that question back at you and ask you what your best one was?
my best one, holy shit. Um, I'll say the best two. I had Gaul from Gorgoroth and
Hmm.
Necrobusher from Mayhem in the same week.
Yeah.
Uh, it was a little bit frightening, to be honest with you, because I woke up and this was like in the beginning of the pandemic,
Hmm.
and I was like,
When everybody was
"Are-
available.
yeah, I was like, everybody's available. I'm gonna go for the gold, man. I'm gonna go for like
Yeah.
one of the biggest underground bands of all time, and they just both of them the same week, and to me, like both of those guys are just so genuine and like down to earth. I just think that like they've been beaten down with the same fucking uh press questions
Yeah.
that I don't know. I literally like messaged a whole bunch of my friends. I was like, "Hey man, what should we talk about?" And like I just went off of that. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And the thing was they had nothing really going on, so it was like perfect time to do something like out of the
Right.
blue, But yeah, they both went good, and I made sure that they didn't get deleted because the week before I lost fucking Havoc, David's half of his interview, and it was
Yeah.
bad. Those are the worst, man.
Yeah. The way these things like disappear is amazing. I've had a couple that I realize I'm not recording until like halfway through, or then I get off and I realize I wasn't recording off my microphone. I was recording off of the laptop's microphone or something,
Yeah,
and it's like
those are the best.
it's just like crushing, like especially when you think it went well. Not so bad when you think it went shitty, but when you think it went well and then you get off and you're like, oh fuck, it's all gone or it's all ruined.
Yeah,
I don't think I've
I've
ever had to
lost
trash
3.
anything though.
I've
Ooh.
definitely lost 3 for sure. Like half full.
Mhm.
But I mean that's pretty good out of 100 for me. Like I
Yeah, no,
mean,
that's good spoilage.
but how many have you lost? You got 204. Come on.
I've only I didn't lose any. I've lost portions of episodes, and
Okay.
then I would like I did one with Gravedigger, the classic German heavy metal band, who are
Yeah, yeah.
surprisingly still around. But like I realized I was pretty close to the end of that interview where I realized I wasn't recording anything, and but then I just like clicked record. But the guy's 60 years old. He's taking his time. He's been talking to me for an hour. I don't know how to break it to him. I don't know how to break it
You're
to him
like
that I haven't been
I
recording this
bro,
whole.
I was just say I did the same thing, man.
So I just
I
let it
was like,
go.
yeah,
And I just used what I had and put it like, and I paired it with another interview and just like put it as like, here's this with this.
yep. That is definitely that's definitely us. So the next topic I got for you, man, is something like for me, man, I started this during the beginning of the pandemic, and I mean, I've just kind of cruised with it, and My question is, before starting your podcast, would you consider yourself like an extremely sociable person? Like, do you think
Um,
that you could walk up to anybody and have a conversation with them?
I think I could up to a certain point in my life, and then I think I couldn't anymore, and that's why podcasting became attractive. Because
Yeah.
there when I was younger, like in school age and even after, I'd say I'm gonna bring it up to an age. I'm gonna say until I was 26 years old, I was really I was really outgoing. I was voted class clown in my class. You know, like in high school. Like by no means was I, um, what do I want to say, an outcast. I was a very popular um, kid who was like I played varsity basketball, but was also super into hardcore and heavy metal and punk rock and skateboarding. Like I did all. I was able to float in crowds. That was my thing. Like that was what I was good at. Went to college, had a lot of fun there. Whatever. Got deep in, just I was outgoing, talkative, funny, right? And I got into but I used to get into I talk too much and I get in a lot of fights, right? And and which I didn't mind so much. That was like, it was part of my shitty personality at the time. And so when I was 26, I got in this fight in Baltimore when I was living in Baltimore, and the guy knocked me out with one punch in an alley, like two
Jesus.
o'clock in the morning. I was wasted. We had been drinking since like 10 a.m. that day. It was like, I almost made like 24 hours drinking and fighting it in this alley, and woke up with half my face slashed up. It would be like a Chelsea grin. It would be like half of my
Yeah,
face
yeah.
was ripped open, right? So I woke up. I had my fingers in in a wheelchair in Johns Hopkins Hospital. I had my fingers through my cheek, and I was like just feeling around because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And as I'm laying there, they're stitching up my face, and I'm like talking. I vaguely remember this. I'm talking about how the front of my brain hurt, front of my head hurts, and they're like,
Jesus.
and they're telling me that I have to do MRIs, whatever. So they do, and they eventually find that I'm bleeding on my brain, and that takes like 2 weeks for me to recover from. Right, I had to have my face sewed back together on both sides. That sounds a little more dramatic than it was, but the scar's way bigger than I remembered. I just shaved my face recently for the first time in 10 years. It's like, oh damn, that's pretty big. But but anyway, so after that brain injury, I've always felt like I've been a little weirder since then, like a little more
Mhm.
um way more of an introvert. Like I don't want to do anything with anybody, like at
Right.
all. Like
You're
even
gonna
when
end up in an alleyway drunk again.
yeah, no, like even like the idea of like going to shows. Like I'm like, hell yeah, I see a lineup and I'm like, yes, I want to do that. And then as the date gets closer, I'm like, I don't want to fucking do that. I don't want to be out there. And it's not like I don't know. It's not like a weird fear or anything. It's just like I don't want to exhaust myself with this. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's some fucking weird thing I do. But but so while doing that, while being a bit of a recluse, and really spending a lot of time with my daughter too, because was a single parent and had my daughter every weekend, so I wasn't seeing people. I wasn't getting out and going places. So that's when I was like,
Right.
you know what? I still like talking to people, but this way I don't have to hear I don't have to listen to them. If it's just me talking, I don't have to hear them say anything back to me, because that's how the podcast originally started, was just me talking. There wasn't interviews until like 20 episode 20 something is where I had
Yeah, I was
Ben
wondering
from
about that,
Chemist. Yeah.
man. Cause like your podcast literally starts on like I think like 35 or something like that.
Well, those episodes still exist. They're like banked in a Patreon just for the fuck of it. That I was trying to do that. I should just unleash them all, because I'm really bad at doing a Patreon. So I should just unleash them, re-release all of them. You know what I mean? Because they're still out there.
Well,
They're just
I just assumed like for me, the first like 20 podcasts I ever did, I'm like, fuck, I don't want anybody to hear this. Like the guests were good, but I just had a terrible time like trying to execute a good conversation.
yeah. That's well, problem with my early episodes isn't so much the content, it's the way it was all recorded. Now I mentioned, like, when we started talking, I'm using the same microphone I was when I started, but I didn't know how to do anything about it. So I would call up my friends and we would basically be screaming at each other, and the audio would be all over the place, and it was
Yeah.
it's not worth being out there. But there are some okay early ones where like I said, Ben Hutcherson from Chemist, JR from Pig Destroyer. I'm not sure which other ones aren't out there, but there's a couple of them that were pretty decent back then. But yeah, but it did start out just me talking, but the episodes were like 10 minutes long, so it wasn't a huge
Yeah,
loss to get
I
rid of
could
them.
not do that. I have to be talking to somebody. I literally, I'll go off on some tangent, and then everybody will be like, "This guy's a dick." I
Well,
know.
that was
I
basically my premise. It was just me saying dumb shit. There was like one whole episode about how my balls are too long for my age. Like like stuff that I
yes.
it's probably good I took off the internet.
Yeah, the boss was like, Dan, I found this online, and I'm curious if we could show this at a presentation for everybody.
Yeah. No, it's okay that some of them disappeared.
Oh man. All right. So what this is a good one for you. What is a dream guest? I mean, mine is Corpse Grinder for sure. 100%. I've tried so hard it ain't working out. But what about you?
Well, I've answered this question once before when I did an interview with No Echo, and at the time I said like two that I felt were really realistic, and they were rooted in hardcore, which is Mad Joe Black, the singer from Wisdom in Chains, a Pennsylvania hardcore band, who I've done since then. He's a guy I know, so that one I knew wasn't a stretch. He's just a person I really like, so I was glad to talk to him. The other one is Martin Gonzalez from the New York hardcore band Billy Club Sandwich, and that's another guy who I just love. And actually, I was just talking to him the other day about doing it. So that one's pretty easy too. But the other two, which I think are unlikely, but I'd love to have them on, is Michael from Opeth and Fenriz. And
Fenriz is like off the radar, man. I've tried
oh
hard
yeah, I'm
too.
sure.
Like I like talk to like Norwegian friends of his, and I'm like I've had him on the podcast. I'm like, do you think that he would ever like do a podcast? And they're like, no. He does not internet. He just no, doesn't work.
But he talks. That's the thing. That guy seems to love talking and seems to be hard to get to stop talking. And that's why I think he'd be fun to talk to. But I don't know that I have enough knowledge in his world to make it an interesting thing. I would just be like, hey, can you start talking? And I'm going to listen now. Like,
and then just chip in.
Yeah.
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 My like side question off of that was like, what would you talk about? Like, if you had to talk to Fenriz, what would you talk about?
Ah, Jesus, I don't know. I mean, like, of course, there'd be necessary Dark Throne questions, but then I'm like not even that big of a Dark Throne fan, so it wouldn't even be like.
I think it's just a challenge, man. Like
Yeah,
for me, sometimes it's like, I haven't heard from this guy in like years, man. I wonder what he's up to. And then once you get a hold of him, man, it's like, fuck yeah, like I love that. It's awesome.
Yeah. No, it's there's some people like. There's some musicians guests that I would like to have, but at the same time, I feel like I know everything about them, and
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd have anything interesting to ask. Like I don't know how to phrase that correctly, but there's been people that I've had on where I don't know what to ask them. Like I don't because it's almost like they've been, at least in our world of podcasting with extreme music, is like they've been like oversaturated, and like we've heard them all several times on several different
They've been on
episodes. Like,
every podcast. Yeah.
yeah,
Every
and it's like
podcast, man.
you don't realize it until you're already like scheduled and ready to go, and maybe doing some research and going, all right, let me hear what he has to say, because I don't know about you, but I'll check in like if I know I'm going to talk to somebody, and I think I wonder, like sometimes I just want to know what someone's voice sounds like prior to hearing them, prior to getting them.
Yeah,
on the
that
line.
is. Yeah.
And
You're like,
so
am I going to be like trying to tune in this whole conversation or what?
Yeah. So I'll check people out and then be like, oh, they've been on everyone's thing, and then it kind of takes away from it. But that's just that might just be more ego. I don't know. Pennsylvania is I would say it's a I mean, most states probably have the same thing going on, but in my experience, I lived in Pennsylvania and I lived in Maryland, Baltimore. So I only have those two things to compare it to. In Maryland, it was basically you have Baltimore and then you have DC, right? Those were like there's like two scenes in that area. And Pennsylvania is very different. It's like you have I live in the Lancaster, Pennsylvania, like I said, and there's a lot of cool shit that somehow comes out of here, this specific area. I don't quite understand it, but it's always happened. Right now, for example, tonight you have a show going on downtown for the metalcore band August Burns Red. They are from here. They are huge. They are literally my neighbors. I see them. Well, I've known them for years. I saw them when I was out running, but they have like Zayo playing with them, and I forget who else. Um, I don't know. I don't know the lineup of the bands, but you have like that. So there's this big metalcore thing, Jesus metalcore thing that comes out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. This is where Relapse Records was started. This is where fuck, what else? I'm gonna miss so many important shit. But they're like there used to be a record label here called Super Soul 7, which was ran by Ray Capo from Youth of Today and Jeremy Weiss from CI Records. Like there's this weird stuff that comes out of just this dumb spot in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
But but what people would consider like the real um, music scene is probably just Philadelphia. Philadelphia, there's so much that pumps out of Philadelphia between metal, between hardcore, between punk. Um, the hardcore scene in particular is huge in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But even
I
like
was gonna say hardcore for sure. Right now, I feel like hardcore is like the biggest fan base right now. Like to go to shows. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
death metal is popular, but every hardcore show that I go to, local or not, it's always sold out.
Yeah, it's. I mean,
Since
it's enormous right now. They just did a big show at my favorite venue. I would tell you is Reverb in Reading, Pennsylvania, and that's owned by a
nice.
guy who's played in hardcore bands for his whole life. Chris Mahmood. He's in bands like Mushmouth. He's in a band right now called Carried by Six. But it's like Guy ran, but it's a legit venue. You know, it's they've had some huge, enormous shows for all genres, right? That's a great place. They have a cool outdoor stage. They have a cool small indoor stage. They have a big ass stage for when necessary, and that's just great. The place I used to love was pretty close here called Chameleon Club, but that shut down for the pandemic. And then my buddy um, had a DIY garage space in York, Pennsylvania called Skid Row Garage that ran for over 10 years as an illegal DIY venue. It just got shut down.
Nice. Those are the
Um,
best.
Oh, it was so good. There's so many cool bands played in that little garage and big bands and small bands, but it was just it really was like a like it's the type of venue that everybody wishes they had in every
Nice.
scene,
Yeah.
and it made it 10 years, so that was great. But the Pennsylvania as a whole, like to try to answer this question, I don't know if I can correctly. There's just so many different areas and sounds. Pittsburgh has this great thing going on out there now where this guy named AJ who's in this he's in this ridiculous band called Face Wreck, but he himself has started this. I think he calls it Preserving Underground now. It's this immense record store. He bought a church and made the basement a record store and put a venue down there. And
God
it's
damn.
crazy. If you look on like Instagram, just look. I think it's Preserving Underground. He's changed the name a couple times, but it's always been Preserving something. But I think now it's Preserving Underground. But that's out in Pittsburgh. But that's fucking 4 hours away from me.
That
You know
sounds
how
like a
geography
rad
works.
venue, man.
Right?
Yeah.
It is.
Well, I know Pennsylvania, man. I drove from Buffalo to Florida, and it's freaking. Let's put it this way, man. The roads, man. It's like mountains. You're like driving up and down and up and down. Dude, it gets me tired. So
Through the Poconos, right? But that even there, those mountain areas, there's long been and always will be like a lush and back to hardcore scene out there. Wilkes-Barre and Nanticoke, those areas have had some of the biggest names in the hardcore scene, and even I think pop punk. I'm not really totally familiar, but the band Title Fight was a huge band that people loved that are into that from that area. I don't, but yeah, it's all, Pennsylvania's got it all over. The metal, I mean, you have Decibel magazine based out of Philadelphia too. So you're always going to get the Decibel Metal and Beer Fest in Philly every year, and those lineups
Yeah.
are
No, I
crazy.
I I literally went to that this year, the first time ever, man, and it was great.
I bet, and I've never been. I wish I had. I wish I have because
It's
I love
it's a
beer,
little
and
bit of rough part of town, but I mean, it's definitely worth the drive.
that's okay. I'm literally in Philadelphia every single Sunday of every single week for my whole life. So that's you know what I mean. Like I'm totally familiar. So,
Yeah.
but it's almost like I don't know how it is for you up there. I don't know how much.
So
Um,
so I don't live downtown Buffalo. I live like
yeah.
in the country. So
Hmm.
this is why like podcasts are awesome because like I live out in the middle of nowhere. So like it takes, let's put it this way, if I want to go to a show it takes 45 minutes to an hour to go.
Yeah.
And I
See,
mean,
and like where you can be like almost anywhere, at least along the southern border of Pennsylvania, and you can go 45 minutes in any direction and hit several shows. Like it's just always been that way. 45 minutes I grew up in York, Pennsylvania, and 45 minutes south was Baltimore, and that's how I ended up there. 45 minutes east was here where I'm at now. 45
yeah.
minutes west was Gettysburg, and there would sometimes be things there. North it was Harrisburg, and there was a great venue up there called the Championship that forever had, for years had incredible metal and hardcore shows. It's totally spoiled out here, down here, I should say. It feels
That's
like
good.
it feels
Yeah.
like being in the hub of it, but that also seems like that's probably just ego too. You know what I mean? That's just
Yeah.
like, oh, the world
Yeah, yeah.
revolves around us. Like it's probably not true, but it seems that way.
It's like, I mean, like Texas. I hear a lot of things about like Texas metal bands all the time, on how
Hmm.
they're kind of like spoiled out there because like when bands show up, um, like for example, like Frozen Soul, when they play a show out there, it's
Yeah.
kind of secluded, but when they do play, it's a packed house, And I feel like hardcore is just always packed.
Well, the Texan thing right now, yeah, I agree with you on there. And there's a lot of awesome bands in Texas. And Texas is kind of doing the whole hardcore and death metal combination better than anybody else. And it's not even that the
Yeah,
bands sound like the bands don't necessarily sound like a combination between the two genres. They just have people that go between. You have like Creeping Death and Frozen Soul, and well, Power Trip when they were
I
doing it.
am.
And
You
yeah,
listen to
I
I
am like
am.
there's yeah, of course. And there's so many of those bands down there that are just doing that. You had Iron Age for a while, but yeah, and those people, they're all really proud of that too. And I think that's the most important thing for any underground music scene, is to have like a proud group of people that are doing it, because
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
gonna show up for each other. And if you don't have that, if you have ego and everybody trying to get to the top, that's not going to happen. One of the great things that I've loved to see uh, is uh, is Baltimore. The way bands keep coming out of Baltimore, and they all sound different, and they're all there for each other too. They're all supporting each other. I think that's what makes good scenes good. It's just
Yeah,
more
that's what
camaraderie.
makes
Yeah,
them. And the thing is, like that, they'll get the little brothers to play in bands. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
that whole atmosphere just makes the. I don't know. My thing is when I go to local shows, like I used to be in a band and stuff. I mean, I kind
Hmm.
of just stopped, and I just did this, and I enjoyed it more. But when I go to shows, like there's just a whole group of like local bands that are just friends, and I'm friends with them, and like I just feel it'd be a little bit different if I went to like a fucking, I don't know, like Ozzy show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Like I
yeah.
mean, I would have like two friends there, and that, I think that's the main reason why I support underground music. I don't know about you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like the first show I went to out of the pandemic was Judas Priest. It was Judas Priest and Sabaton over in Reading, and it was just me and my wife went there, and I don't know fucking soul in the thousands of people there, and that makes it way less fun. You know, it's just like
Yeah.
as simple as that.
You don't have like a
It's
drinking buddy. You're like at
yeah.
nothing. You know?
No, you just got to watch the weird woman who's the weird old 6-year-old woman who's putting her mask over her eyes and going ape shit for breaking the law. You know, like that's
Yeah, that's
that's the highlight
exactly.
instead of catching up with somebody else. You know,
So my question to you is like, what I heard was you're not a musician. You used to be a vocalist, and um, how did you get into like the underground scene? You know what I mean? Because me,
hmm
the way in for me was being a guitar player. Um, I don't think I would have went to local shows if it wasn't for that. I don't know.
I think I don't know. I don't. It's hard for me to pinpoint where I found it, right? Because when I got a skateboard in the summer before seventh grade. I got a Tom Penny flip mushroom skateboard, magic mushroom skateboard, right? And I got a pair of Simon Woodstock Vans sneakers. And with that pair of Simon Woodstock Vans sneakers came Punkorama Volume 2.1 from Epitaph Records. And that had on like Pennywise and H2O and Descendants and Rancid, like that type of punk, a little bit of hardcore. And I think
Yeah.
that was like dipping my toes in, right? That was the first CD I have. I didn't even have a CD player. But then like when I say that and I think about it, I was like, wait a minute, I had cassettes of stuff. You know, I had weird stuff like Cake or Mighty Mighty Boss Tones and things like that. You know, like skateboarding, like 90s skateboarding stuff. Like just really popular things. But then
Yeah.
I think it was when I got BMG. Are you familiar with the BMG Columbia House like pyramids? Not pyramid scheme, but like
No,
CD
no,
ordering.
no.
Okay, so you used to get these things in the mail where it would either be BMG or Columbia House, and it would be like get 12 CDs for a penny, and
Okay.
they would
All right.
literally want you to attach tape a penny onto a little postcard and fill out which CDs you wanted out of this catalog, and then you send it back to them, and then they would send you the CDs. But the trick was then you were really signing this contract where now you had to get monthly featured selections, they call them, and they would just show up in your mailbox with a bill for them. And they were like, you know,
Oh,
this was like it was hard. That was when it, you know, the internet wasn't really much of a thing, and it was hard to get a hold of people to tell them to stop billing you, right? But the thing
yeah.
was, if you were a kid, in the fine print, it said contract void if minor. So you could just keep doing these 12 CDs for a penny, and they would keep sending them to you. And then when they would send you the bill, you call them up and say, I'm fucking 14. I can't do this. You can't put me in a contract. And then they would wipe the whole thing clean. So you just get CDs after CDs after CDs. So this is how I built a ridiculous CD collection. And when I was doing that, like I knew I wanted heavy music, so I would just look for certain record labels. I would look for things that looked familiar. I would look for Roadrunner stuff, Sepultura, Fear Factory, Machine Head, uh, Biohazard, whatever. And then it was thanks lists, and you know those thanks lists from the CDs, getting into them. And then I think the way I got into like a local underground scene was seeing a flyer in my school for I can't tell you which band it was, for a band that I had a CD of, and just going to a skate park and seeing them there, and then being like, oh shit, you can just come here every Friday and there'll be bands
That's
playing,
awesome.
and that
Damn,
was
you
it.
had a
That was
you had they do that kind of near me in Syracuse. It's 3 hours away, but that's been like a recent thing, and I've been like hoping with this pandemic and all this shit that they do that often. But they're rooted from like hardcore bands. Like that's who runs it.
yeah.
And I'm like, damn, man. I don't know. Like conventional venues are just not making the cut, man. Basement shows and skate parks, man. Those are the best memories.
That's the stuff that I came up on, and park buildings and VFWs, you know, and like right now, I mentioned earlier that the that August Burns Red right now, the giant metalcore band is playing they're playing at convention center in the town hall. That's literally where they're playing right now. Convention
Yeah.
Town Hall Convention Center right now. When we started doing shows, they used to book them, and they used to book all the guy JB, the guitar player, used to book all the local shows. Like they were in it, and they would book them at the VFW, and they would book them at the Lancaster American Legion, like real, like just rent the venue out, book it yourself, have the build the community, and now they fucking live on this stuff. So like
Yeah,
it doesn't
it's crazy
just because
to
it
me.
starts there, it doesn't mean it has to end there. I see them. I have in my view people who went from booking and playing these garages and basements to playing the fucking town hall convention center and owning houses off of it. Like, and not
Yeah,
that that's like the goal always, right? But
it just happened.
it's
It,
just as
and
legitimate.
it's
Is
funny
all I'm
to
saying.
me. It's funny to me when people say there's no money in underground and like death metal and all that like dark music, right? Or thrash metal and all that shit.
Yeah,
I'm like, there's no way. Because like, for example, man, um, there's a band that I support from Canada. They're called like Unrequited. They're a black
yeah, I
metal
know that.
band,
Yeah, I
right?
know. Yeah, they use do you use a V instead of a U?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
One man black metal, and the dude lives in Canada, and that's all he does for a living is just make black metal in his room, and he lives off of it.
That's awesome.
The second I heard that on this podcast, man, I'm like, okay, this just goes to show you that even like the wildest of music can pay the rent.
I mean, it depends on what you consider your standard of living, your means are. You know what I mean? If you're content um, at a certain level, then you can live off of pretty much any income, right? But
Yeah.
I hope it's significant.
It sounded like he had his own apartment and shit, and I'm like, man, it don't sound bad what you're doing, man. And like, I don't know. It just blows my mind to think that like the regular Joe is like, you can't make money in that. Just quit. Stop supporting that stuff. Like you're not going anywhere with it.
I think the idea that it has to be the only thing that you do is ridiculous. Like I understand what people are saying, but I don't understand why people don't make room for two things in their lives. Like
Yeah.
like we do with everything, but then like, hey, that silly music with corpse paint and songs about I don't know, necro butchers or whatever is you can't do that. Like sure you can. You can't. Why can't you? Like what's the difference between that and like that's the thing that
Reality
always got me.
TV.
Yeah. Well, like a thing like specifically between like heavy and extreme music genres that always got me is that like people make fun of hardcore for being like, all right, we'll say like black metal crowd's gonna make fun of hardcore crowd for being like fucking stupid tough guys, dumber than a bag of hammers, right? Stupid lyrics, and like they're not wrong, okay? But where is that coming from? That's coming from people talking about wearing face paint and just singing the stupidest shit I ever heard, right? Like
Throwing
it's
pigs
just
on
as
stakes, man.
yeah, it's just as stupid. It's all stupid. It's all just entertainment, and that's a weird thing that I think people don't want to accept a lot of times is that this music is also entertainment and it's supposed to be fun and it's not all this serious and we don't need to all be the best at every yeah, I don't know. It's a weird competition. That's one of the things that I've always enjoyed and I specifically enjoy about doing Getting It Out podcast is that I talk about all the genres of music I like, not just like I'm not going to pigeonhole because I don't listen to one thing, and I think the people that do are really really like I don't know what you're what's the word I'm looking for? You're taking away from yourself. That's not the words I want to use, but you're starving yourself of other shit. I don't know. It's a hard way to say it,
Right.
but you know what I mean. I think.
Yeah, it's tough. It really is. So let's do two more, and this is a good one. So thinking back to episode 1, right, a long
Mhm.
time ago, and what was your end goal, and how is it like? Has it changed? Like from back from day one to right now, or is it still the same thing?
I think it depends on the the which goal, because goal number one, and still goal number one, was really just to entertain myself, but it was really to entertain myself back then. I had nothing going on for me when I started doing the podcast. I was just living by myself, single. I always had my kid on the weekends, but I just worked a manufacturing job, and I just liked to do something that made myself laugh and might make my friends laugh. And it's funny because my initial, like the first episode, I think I said on the first episode, is that I have no intention of turning it into an interview show, which is exactly what I did. But like, I don't know if I just ran out of ideas or what, but really it's just entertaining myself. And then it was like, well, if other people will enjoy it too, that'd be cool. But I used to just like ramble on about things I saw at the gym. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't real stuff. Um, but but I think my goals now are more realistic. Oddly enough, going back to our conversation we just had, I don't think there's any money to be made off of podcasting, especially
Right.
about what the podcast that I do, getting it out pocket. There's no money in that. I never thought there was, but like now I know for sure 4 years in, there is definitely, it is going to burn a hole. It's not going to, it's not going to fill the pockets. It's going to empty them. It doesn't have to empty them all the way, but you can make some here and lose some there, but there's definitely no long-term financial future in it. At least
Right.
not, at least not if you, I don't know, you got to commit like all the way. And I'm not going to do that with a podcast,
Right. Yeah, it's tricky. I feel like, I don't know, like podcasts are tough to make money. Like I how do I put this? The only way that you're going to make money from it is like donations,
Yeah. Patreon. Yeah, basically.
And I mean, I have a Patreon account and I've had donations and it works for sure, but it was like very hard to get supporters. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's different trying to reach out to people. Like we're recording this and then we're going to upload it in a week and then whatever, post it.
Yeah.
And it's different from walking up to somebody on the side of the street and saying, "Hey man, can you donate $5 to me?" versus throwing out into the fucking web and hoping that somebody hears it,
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and I don't know about you, but for like I have the Patreon. I have Patreon still up, but I mentioned before I was really bad at doing the things I said I was going to do, which were pretty simple things too. But for a guy like me who's works a full-time job, has 2 kids and a wife,
it's not even worth it. It's like for me,
yeah, it's like and then to try to do the regular podcast on top of like extra things, it's like, man, that's not feasible, and it's not worth the extra, what at best $30 a month that came in for that. Doesn't even cover the hosting fee, or it does, but
right.
Like,
that's where I'm at, man.
Yeah.
I think the best part about it is though, like I think the best thing about podcasts, man, you're not signed like a fucking band on a label. Like you can literally talk about whatever you want with whoever you want at any time. You know what I mean? And I don't know.
Yeah,
It's definitely
but I feel like I don't know about you, but for myself, I felt like I had until recently like boxed myself into a corner about what my podcast has to be about, when I have to release it, all that shit. And when I hit episode 200, I said I'm done with it all. Like I'm done with all of what I'm doing other than doing the podcast. Like I'm just going to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And that's why like the last episode is me reading How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Because I'm just going to do the shit that I want to do now, That's it. If I want to talk this, I mean, it's primarily going to be me talking to band members. But like, I don't care about a release date. It doesn't matter. No one's asking me for it anyway, like if I miss a release date, I don't think I'm going to have anybody saying, "Hey man, where's that episode?"
they're going to knock on your door and be like, "What the fuck, man? Come on, Dan."
Yeah. There's no boss in this. And, I need to remember that. And it's weird we get caught up in like doing our own thing and making up these weird rules and guidelines that don't even fucking exist. We're just imposing on ourselves. So I've backed
Yeah.
off on that with myself.
To be honest with you, man, like I took a hard 2-month break, and like this is like this is like my third podcast back, and it was literally just because I felt like kind of like burnout, and on top of it, I was like, you get to the point where you're just like on your phone checking emails all the fucking time, and you're like, I don't know, man. I'm doing a documentary, and I just put focuses more on that, and so sometimes you have to like just take a break. Oh, bro, it's definitely fun, but with the pandemic, it's a son of a bitch. Because I'm just going off of like tours, like I'm meeting up with bands on tour. So
yeah, right. That makes sense though. I mean, especially being all the way up there.
Yeah, I'll send you a preview of what I got so far. I got a lot of footage within like, I don't know, 5 months, but it's just because I've been traveling for it. Like I've driven like 5 hours away and stuff to go, but
Jesus,
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I found a different avenue for like 2 months, and now I'm back at the podcast. So
it all comes back.
But
I get it though. I get feeling the burnout. Like but then like even with myself, I didn't let myself off the hook until I hit 200 episodes. That was like where I put the end of like adhering to some stupid standard I set. Like I had to finish 200 episodes. 200, that's one a week for 200 straight fucking weeks. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
like
that I gotta admit that okay. Let me check mine real quick, because how long did it take you? 4 years, you said?
It's 2021 was my 4th year. So, and I started in 2000. What's that math?
So I'm at 117, right? I don't think I'm gonna get to 200 for at least a year and a half, too. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe 3.
Well, yeah. I mean, you
3.
can't do it in a year unless you do more than one a week.
No, I mean the following year.
Yeah. Yeah, and don't like. What's the rush? You know, like the idea, like, because I don't know about you, but I felt like a lot of things that I was told. I don't even know who would have told me this or where I would have heard this.
When you're sleeping, man, it's the voice on the right side of your head.
But the idea that consistency is the most important thing. And like, for who?
Yeah.
Who's that the most important thing for? Like, it's just people who like underground music. Like, they don't like, fuck consistency. Necrophagus hasn't released an album in how many years? People still love that shit, you know? Like, it doesn't.
Yeah,
it doesn't
exactly.
Matter.
I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna probably try to do one a week, but at the same time, like, I really gotta love the artist. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to pick up like somebody in a fucking, I don't know, pop band. You know, I have to really dig deep. And I don't know, my thing, I don't know about you, but do you love every band before you have them on? I've heard that you
definitely
like, take on band. Yeah, you take on bands that you like don't listen to, right?
Yeah, but I'll find like, but not entirely. Like, I've had people reach out that where I'm like, hey, no, dude, I can't even fake any interest in this. But yeah, I've had bands on that. I've had bands on that like I don't care about. I had Mushroom Head on. I don't give a fuck about Mushroom Head, but I do like the idea. Like, but I do find them to be an interesting band, right?
Right.
So I can talk to them about that. I'd say the bands that I've had on that I don't particularly give a fuck about their sound. It's like two different things. Like, sometimes it's a band I don't give a shit about the way they sound. If you hear me talking to like a really obvious, like, pretty dyed-in-the-wool metalcore band, I probably don't care about their sound. But there's something about them I do respect, right? Sometimes it's just their hustle. Sometimes they're nice people, and that's all it takes, you know. And
Yeah.
like if I'm just approached in a nice way about it, I'm like, yeah, man, we can do that. There's a there's a band or two I've had on more than once, like the same band more than once, where I don't think they're that good, but they're really cool. Like they're really cool as people. They're trying really hard, and that's like the most important. I don't know, like why shouldn't they get a shot? Like who gives a fuck if I
And
like them? Maybe somebody who
and
likes
the thing
my
is
podcast will like them.
that those bands appreciate you more, man.
Oh
That's
my
that's what
god,
I've
so much
noticed.
more. They're so nice, and they're all, yeah, and that's why they can come back. You know, doors
Like
open. Come back anytime you want.
honestly,
Anytime you got something new.
yeah, the younger bands for me for sure, they're like fucking they're all over it. They're like, "Hey man, we love your podcast, man. Let me be on, please, please." I like anything. And I'm like, and then I have them on and like we have a great time. It's like I don't know. You just got to give those guys a shot, you know.
Right, because you know we all want a shot, right? And sometimes I don't know. It's just as simple as letting them get the exposure. Who the fuck are we to deny somebody, right? I get
Exactly.
offended and pissed off if somebody. I did. All right, so this happened before to me where um, I got an interview or I got an email for an interview. Oh, sorry, I had to take a breath. I just got up and ran across the room to let the cat in because it was making a lot of noise, and you didn't notice though. Thankfully, I have on these Bluetooth headphones. Anyway, um, the I had this email for an interview with Randy from Lamb of God once.
Oh, bro, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and I was like,
Damn.
hell, I was like, yeah, let's do that. That sounds great. And then they emailed me back, and they're like, okay, how many listeners do you get monthly? I was like, we're not
Yo,
fucking doing
oh
that. Like,
man.
get out of here. Like, and they're like, well, sorry, it's just like a requirement of the publicist. I was like, well, then no. Like, then no. Then we're not doing it. Like, that's not like I don't know. Don't bring that shit. Even like, and I know this is like that's not him. He doesn't even know this conversation happened. It's
Yeah.
just like, you know, somebody else saying, yeah, you're not up to a
You're
certain
not
standard,
qualified.
so yeah, we can't work
I,
with you. It's like, well, fuck that.
I
I'm
would
not going to do that to other people.
I'm actually really glad you said that because I had that happen to me from a certain record label
Hmm.
that's somewhat popular but not super popular. And I just kind of felt like they just fucking like spit in my face because I'm like, bro, I've talked to like some of the biggest metal bands around and you're gonna tell
Yeah,
me that I
you
can't talk
certainly
to
have. Yeah, you have a
it.
huge names on your list.
And I'm not like flying no fucking flag, but I'm like I email that person, I'm like, so you're telling me after I've talked to all these people that like I'm not qualified to talk to this band that has been around for 2 years and just started touring?
Right.
Because they email me back and they're like, "Hey, to do this interview, you're not worth our time unless you take a screenshot of all your statistics, where your listeners are from." And
Fuck them.
I'm like, bro, I'm like, first of all, do you pay me? No, number one, and number two, do some fucking research. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I don't.
that's
It,
ridiculous.
it
It's dumb because like you and I obviously know, and most people who are into the types of music know, like this is uh supposed to be typically more down to earth and more real, and that's like the whole point of it all, right? And then to be, you know, fucking big time and have like, just because you're not playing mainstream music doesn't mean you doesn't mean it's you can still have those fucking mainstream attitudes of no, you know, gatekeep your shit. I just, sorry, I'm tripping over my words because I don't know how to articulate it correctly, but it pisses me off, and it's not the
no,
first time I've
it
seen it. It won't be the
totally
last. And yeah.
it totally pissed me to fuck off. And the thing is, like, I'm actually reading an autobiography that Brandy did, and he
Mhm.
seems like a super like chill dude that just kind of keeps to himself and like he has
Mhm.
things to say, but he's reserved. But I know for a fact if he hopped on right now, he would enjoy it. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, and
like the
I've
thing of
heard
like,
him do. I've heard him do smaller podcasts. I heard him do Forum of Passion, which is a hardcore based podcast or a hardcore podcast based out of Richmond, Virginia, that Ace Stallings from Mutually Assured Destruction does, and just come on and talk normal, like I'm
Right.
sure it wasn't through a
That's what I
publicist because
mean.
it was
Like,
local, but it's just the fucking working with publicists is mostly
it's
bullshit.
hilarious. It's
Yeah.
absolutely hilarious.
Now,
Because, like,
you gotta give some of them credit. Some of them are really simple and great, right? But other ones are
yes.
ridiculous.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll give a shout out right now. Ear Split is one of the best.
Liz and Dave, absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
Liz is my favorite. She literally is the best publicist around. She's so easy.
Dave is another product of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. By the way, I gotta give
Hell
Lancaster,
yeah.
Pennsylvania. Another.
I haven't like reached out to him, but Liz is like, because she's honestly helped me out with like the documentary like tremendously, like hooking me up. And I don't know, it's just to me like the second you find somebody that's like level headed and they understand that like Randy, dude. When I listen to his podcast, man, he's just a fucking normal dude. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I get it. He's got status, but like, he gets it that like it's underground music, bro. Like, don't
It's for
trip over
weirdos,
your
like
own fucking feet.
It's weirdo music, It's just fucking. I don't know. It shouldn't be that complicated. It shouldn't be that nose in the air. And like again, I don't put that on him at all. It's just
No,
publicist shit.
that's hilarious. I'm glad that we touched on that because I just kind of I was like, am I the only one dealing with this shit? Like, but so
Yeah, no, and I know other guys who just won't do publicists anymore, and
they won't do it.
yeah, well,
I honestly don't do it.
It's because
I won't.
I think it's because podcasting is like looked down on right now. Unless you're this big name, it's like this supplemental
Joe Rogan.
Yeah, like if you're not that, you're like this supplemental version of press that doesn't matter. Like, hey man, I couldn't tell you the last time I physically read an interview outside of Decibel magazine.
No,
and outside of,
I was gonna say those
outside of Decibel and outside of even your fanzine, the Noise Doses Media fanzine. Outside of reading like those things physically in my hand, I'm not going to a website to read an interview. I don't do it. Like, I just
there's
don't.
Literally no point.
Yeah, just listen to it.
And like, so my closing statement to you is this. So we both have a different approach on interviews, very laid back and casual.
Mhm.
And I'm just kind of curious as your opinion is on like standardized interviews. Like, do you find our way a little bit more genuine? Like, how could you sell it to a normal person that listens to music and wants to support a band?
Sell what I do, what you do with
Yeah. I mean, just in general, like, do you feel what you do is a more genuine way to, spread the word of what they're doing?
I do, but I think you got to, like we talked about really early on, you got to have the person on board, like to be willing to go there, to be willing to, answer the questions, but like hit the topics or whatever. Get the press. Tell me the release date, the name of the album, blah blah blah. Blah. But then also also touch on all the other shit that's actually interesting, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard people do it differently, and they do a good job. What's his name? I've had him on. Fox and Hops. What's his name?
Oh, Matt.
Cryptopsy.
He's the man, dude.
Matt McGachy. Yeah. So he has like the opposite, I think, way of questioning, where he has his standard questions that he asks every single time, right?
Yeah.
To every guest. But like when he and I talked about it, he's like, well, if they answer this way, I know that from there I can ask this, right? And that's such a smarter way than I do things, because I tend to get tripped up on what I want to say, what I want to ask about, how I want to respond.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to listen to them but also think about how I want to follow up, right?
Right.
Like I don't want to miss their point and then just be
And
like,
some
yeah,
days
yeah,
you'll have off days. You're off days, and you just fucking you can't do
can't
it.
do it.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it's rough. So I always have a piece of paper beside me with questions that I would like to ask. Um, I don't necessarily always use it, but it's there. Like, so if I find myself lost on it, but to sell it to somebody, I don't know, because I mean, it should be a real simple thing, like um, to hear, musicians that you like in a casual conversation. But I don't know if that's always true, you know, like I
Yeah.
wish it were, I wish it were that easy to sell. And also being that you and I both deal with pretty underground musicians. You go a little more mainstream than I do. Not mainstream in the. I'm sorry, I don't mean mainstream, but you get the
No.
bigger names than I
Yeah.
do.
No. No.
Um,
Yeah.
so it might be easier to say, hey, you want to hear Zetro have a casual conversation, right? That's more interesting to me than hear him just a formulaic interview that I've heard or read 1,000 times before.
I feel like if Matt just has a really good personality. The biggest thing with him is like, bro, me and him could talk for like hours, man, because he just understands how to have a conversation with people. And
Mhm.
like what I feel like once you can unlock that key, like you can do podcasts no problem. And his formulas do work because it's just enough to like keep the people coming back. It's like a TV show, man. Like you know what to expect.